Let's go live to the UK, where Boris Johnson is expected to face a grilling during Prime Minister's questions in the House of Commons. The UK's rate of inflation has reached 9% as prices rise to the highest rate for 40 years. Let's listen in.
Labour me out, Labour puts up taxes, catch me out, Labour put up taxes. What we want to do is take a sensible approach governed by the impact on investment and jobs, Mr. Speaker. And that is the test of a strong economy. And it's by having a strong economy that we'll be able to look after people as we have done during COVID and as we will do in the aftershocks of COVID. And I'm proud to say, Mr. Speaker, that this week it was revealed that unemployment has come down to the lowest level since 1974. When I was 10 years old, Mr. Speaker. I don't know how old he was, but I was 10 years old.
Here's Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, hang on. Last week he said, we'll have a look at it. Yesterday he voted against it. Anyone picking up the papers today would think they're for it, and now he says he's against it again. Clear as mud. To be fair, it's not like the rest of his cabinet know what they think either. The same day the Chancellor said it was something he was looking at, the Justice Secretary said it would be disastrous. The Business Secretary called it a bad idea, but also said he'd consider a Spanish-style windfall tax. 1 minute they're ruling it in, the next they're ruling it out. When will he stop the hokey-cokey and just back Labour's plan for a windfall tax to cut household bills?
Mr. Speaker, the Labour's plans are always and everywhere to raise taxes on business, and that's what they did. I remember him campaigning in 2019, Mr. Speaker, on the biggest taxes for business that this country has ever seen. That's their instinct. Now, look. This country and the world faces problems in the cost of energy, driven partly by COVID and partly by Putin's war of choice in Ukraine. And we always knew that there would be a short-term cost in weaning ourselves off Putin's hydrocarbons and in sanctioning the Russian economy. Everybody in this House voted for those sanctions. We knew that it would be tough. But I just want to tell the right honourable gentleman that giving in, not sticking the course, would ultimately be the far greater economic risk. Yes, of course, Mr. Speaker, we will look at measures. We will look at all the measures that we need to take, Mr. Speaker, to get people through to the other side. But, Mr. Speaker, the only reason we can do that is because we took the tough decisions that were necessary during the pandemic, which would not have been possible if we'd listened to him.
Here's Starmer.
He just doesn't get it, does he? He doesn't actually understand what working families are going through in this country, struggling about how they're going to pay their bills. And whilst he dithers, British households are slapped with an extra £53 million on their energy bills every single day. Meanwhile, every single day, North Sea oil and gas giants rake in £32 million in unexpected profits. Doesn't he see that every single day he delays his inevitable U-turn, is going to do it? He's choosing to let people struggle when they don't need to.
Mr. Speaker, he says that this government has no sympathy for people who are struggling and working. Let me tell you, let me tell you what we're already doing. We're already spending £22 billion. We're already helping people with the cost of living in any way that we can, Mr. Speaker. But the reason we can do that is because we took the tough decisions to get this country through COVID, to make sure that we came out of lockdown in the way that was necessary, and to have a strong economy with robust employment growth, Mr. Speaker. And we will continue to take, and he talks about cutting taxes. In July, we will have the biggest tax cut for 10 years, £330 cuts for 30, on average, for 30 million people who are paying national insurance contributions. And the reason we can do that, Mr. Speaker, is because we have a strong and robust economy. I'm going to look at all measures in future to support our people. Of course I am. But the only reason we can do that, the only reason our companies are in such robust health is because of the decisions that this government has taken.
Mr. Speaker, still pretending the economy is booming, still got his head in the sand in the middle of an economic crisis. The Prime Minister keeps saying more help is coming, but we've heard it all before. May the 13th, he stood there and said, we will do more right now. A week has passed and there's been nothing. On April the 19th, he stood there and said, we will do more as soon as we can. A month has passed and still nothing. The Chancellor said, wait until the autumn. At least he's honest that the plan is to do nothing. But doesn't the Prime Minister realise that working people across the country can't afford to wait while he vacillates? It's time to make his mind up.
I'll tell you what's happened in the last month. We've got 300,000 more people off welfare and into work on our way to work programme, Mr. Speaker. And it is because we get people into work that those families, those people are £6,000 a year better off. It's by getting people into work that we fix the long-term problems of this economy. His answer, Mr. Speaker, his answer, in addition to putting up taxes, his answer is to borrow more. We heard it from the Shadow Chancellor this morning. She says she wants to borrow almost another £30 billion. That's what she says. Now, do you know what that means, Mr. Speaker? It means more pressure on interest rates. It means pressure on mortgages. It means pressure on every family, every man, woman and child in this country, Mr. Speaker. That's Labour economic policy. That is why there's never been a Labour government that left office with unemployment lower than when it came in. And that's the reality.
Mr. Speaker, on the day when inflation went to 9%, the highest for 40 years, I think the watching public, the least they can expect is a Prime Minister who concentrates on the cost of living crisis. Clearly, he just can't make his mind up. So let's have a look at who's for it and who's against it. On one side, the chair of Tesco, the chair of John Lewis, the chair of the Treasury Select Committee, the chair of the Education Select Committee, Lord Hague, Lord Brown, the old CEO of BP, all support a windfall tax. Even the current boss of BP says it wouldn't discourage investment. And on the other side, the member for North East Somerset. When he's not sticking notes on people's desks like some overgrown prefect, is dead set against it. When is he finally going to get a grip, stand up for the people of Britain and get on the right side of the argument?
Mr. Speaker, nothing could be more transparent from this exchange than their lust to raise taxes on business. Mr. Speaker, we don't relish it. We don't want to do it. We don't want to do it. Of course we don't want to do it. We believe in jobs and we believe in investment and we believe in growth. And as it happens, the oil companies concerned are on track to invest about £70 billion into our economy over the next few years. They're already taxed, Mr. Speaker, at a rate of 40%. Mr. Speaker, what we want to see is investment in the long-term energy provision of our country, which they've signally failed to do, by the way, cancelling our nuclear power investment. He talks about the people who are suffering from high energy prices in this country today, Mr. Speaker, have previous Labour governments to blame for that mistake. And of course, we will look at all sensible measures, Mr. Speaker, but we will be driven by considerations of growth, investment and employment. And I just remind you, Mr. Speaker, that unemployment's now hit a record low, or for 50 years, I should say, and employment is now I think 500,000 people more now in paid employment, payroll employment, than there were before the pandemic began.
So he's on the side of excess profits for oil and gas companies. We're on the side of working people. And there you have it. But he clearly doesn't like me pushing him on this. But the reason I keep coming back to this subject and why it's so frustrating that he hasn't acted is because so many people are living through this nightmare and they feel totally abandoned by their government. This week, I spoke to Phoenix Halliwell. A rare kidney condition means Phoenix has to do dialysis from home 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. for 5 days a week, just so he can take his daughter Rosie to school. His dialysis is life-saving, so he can't turn it off. So even though his wife, who's a midwife in the NHS, works extra shifts, during the winter, they had to turn their central heating off, and Phoenix skips meals to make ends meet. But their energy bill has still doubled. Phoenix says he feels like he's being priced out of existence. And it's not just him. Millions of our disabled, elderly and vulnerable neighbours are at the sharp end of this crisis. They simply can't afford to live with dignity. The decisions we make here matter. The cost of indecision is enormous. People across the country need action now. The plans are already there. The Prime Minister, stop the delay. Work with us to put them in place. Do it for households that face bills they can't afford. And do it for Phoenix, who simply can't afford to wait.
Mr. Speaker, I'd be grateful if you could send me the details of the sad case, because the NHS does cover the costs of those who are on dialysis, Mr. Speaker. But if you send me, and by the way, of course, they voted against the vital investment in the NHS that this country needs. And I just remind him in the House of the key point. None of this is possible. The investment in the NHS isn't possible. The 22 billion that we've already put in isn't possible. The further investment that we're going to put in isn't possible without the strong economy that this government in this country has delivered. And it's because we took the tough decisions that I have mentioned that we have record low unemployment. Record low for the last 50 years, Mr. Speaker. And this Queen's speech that we've been debating is about putting in the infrastructure, the skills, the technology that will continue to build the platform for growth and jobs in this country. And that is what this government is committed to doing, and that is the best way out of economic problems. And I thought it was fantastic, by the way, yesterday to see Her Majesty the Queen open Crossrail. 72,000 jobs that has already delivered, 90 billion it will produce for the whole of the UK economy. Well, let me just ask the right honourable gentleman, who was the Mayor of London when Crossrail was first started to be built, Mr. Speaker, and who was the Prime Minister who completed it, Mr. Speaker? We get the big things done, Mr. Speaker. There's never been a Labour government that left office with unemployment lower than when they began.
Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister knows, thanks for visiting us in Leyland a couple of weeks ago, as he knows, knocking on doors there, crime and antisocial behaviour is a big issue for people locally. And part of that problem is that the local police, when response calls are required, are having to come in from Preston or the lovely Chorley. Now Lancashire has got 314 more police thanks to this government. Yeah. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that we need to use some of those to get Leyland Police Response open? And will he work with me, the fabulous local police and the Police and Crime Commissioner to make that happen?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend. She's a terrific campaigner, fantastic campaigner for her constituency. I discovered just the other day. And what we're doing is recruiting more police officers. 300 more in Lancashire, 13,576 more across the whole of the country, and of course. I'd be very happy to arrange the relevant meetings so that we can continue to drive neighbourhood crime, already down 33%, drive neighbourhood crime down even further.
Leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the whole House will want to join me in wishing Glasgow Rangers Football Club all the best in the final tonight in Seville. It's always a joy to see Scottish clubs get to the finals of European competition. Mr. Speaker, people didn't need to see this morning's official statistics to know that we're experiencing the highest inflation in 40 years. They know it because they're living with it. Families can't afford food. They can't pay their bills. And we're only at the beginning. And as always under the Tories, the poorest are punished the most. For months, people have been crying out for support. But month after month, a distracted Downing Street has failed to lift a finger to help. Does the Prime Minister still support his Chancellor's insulting statement that acting now in this cost of living emergency would just be silly?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I support the Chancellor's work in lifting the living wage by a record amount, Mr. Speaker, by making sure people on universal credit pay £1,000 less in tax, by making sure that by putting another £22 billion into supporting people with the cost of living, £9.1 billion already to help people with the cost of energy, and above all, I support what he has done to deliver a strong economic foundation which makes all that possible, Mr. Speaker.
My goodness, talk about an Aesop's fable. Every day this Prime Minister remains out of touch, people remain out of pocket. And by the way, Prime Minister, £20 a week was taken out of people's universal credit. You know, the Prime Minister's just confirmed he does think it would be silly to intervene. Because the Tories' only response to this cost of living crisis has been insults and inaction. The Tory backbencher who thinks poor people, just need cooking lessons. The Tory minister who thinks that people should just get a better paid job. And the Chancellor who thinks it would be silly to act now. This is the cost of living crisis from Westminster. For weeks, the Prime Minister has been briefing that it's the Treasury who are to blame for blocking financial support for struggling families. Well, Prime Minister, it's time to stop sniping from the sidelines. If this Chancellor won't deliver an emergency budget, it's time for the Prime Minister to sack the Treasury, to sack the Chancellor, and to put somebody else in office that will act.
Prime Minister.
Look, Mr. Speaker, I think that the right honourable gentleman should understand that. I want to get back to the crucial point. We've been through COVID. We're facing a spike in global energy prices, which has been greatly exacerbated by what Putin is doing in Ukraine. But to deal with it, of course, what we're doing is putting billions and billions already, 9.1 billion, into supporting people with the cost of energy. Cut fuel duty by record sums, Mr. Speaker, helping elderly people in all sorts of ways, not least through local councils with another £1 billion. But of course, Mr. Speaker, everybody in the country knows that we're not through this yet, and everybody can see that. And they all know that the government is going to do more. But they also know the only reason we can do that is because we have a strong economy with massively high employment, and that is the crucial thing. And it would not have been possible if we'd listened to the members opposite. Absolutely.
Dr. Luke Evans.
The Prime Minister will be aware of my campaign to have digitally altered images carry a label. Last week was Mental Health Awareness Week, and there are 1.25 million people with eating disorders and 1 million people using steroids. Now, 84 members of this House from 7 parties signed my open letter to companies to pledge not to alter their images in their adverts. Will the Prime Minister support that pledge? And for those who aren't taking that pledge, will he vow to make sure that we consider labelling digitally altered images where body proportions are affected?
Minister.
Look, I thank my honourable friend for his fantastic campaign, and he and I have talked about it at length. And I do think there is clearly a risk to mental health as young people are given unrealistic expectations about how they should look because of the stuff that they see. I think the kite mark suggestion that he's brought forward is extremely useful, and I'll make sure that we follow it up as part of our mental health plan.
Ed Davey.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson faces a grilling in Parliament during Prime Minister's questions in the House of Commons. Inflation rate is at its highest in 40 years in the UK, but the Prime Minister defended his government, saying unemployment level is down to its lowest level since 1974. But the opposition accused him of being insensitive to millions of households battling high energy prices and skyrocketing prices. However, the Prime Minister says his government took tough decisions to get the country through the COVID-19 pandemic and to get the country out of lockdown. This robust decision, he says, is why the UK economy is healthy. But opposition leader Keir Starmer, however, says the Prime Minister is burying his head in the sand by pretending that the economy is healthy. Prime Minister Boris Johnson believes previous Labour government should be blamed for high energy prices, while the Conservative Party gets the big things done to deliver jobs for the British people.